everyone, and welcome to TBR webcast, The More You Know, Insights from TBR's Cloud Professional Services Study. I'm Allison Crawford, Senior Marketing Manager here at Technology Business Research, and I will be host for today's session. As you know, TBR's research provides a quantitative look at the core performance in go-to-market, financial metrics, and resource management across partner, vendor, competitor, and customer ecosystems. Research is conducted with the sole purpose of providing insight and help our clients make their business decisions. We recently completed an in-depth study on the status of the cloud professional services market, and the information we'll be covering today comes directly from our 2011 Cloud Professional Services Study. As many of you know, the cloud is altering functionality at all levels of the enterprise. The depth of cloud, customer demand requirements, and vendor support capabilities are rapidly changing. Svarcas, a 25-year tech industry veteran, led a team of TBR analysts to survey 600 cloud buyers to wonder what enterprise customers want and need in cloud professional services offerings. Further, his team utilized TBR's unique customer-centric analysis method to profile 11 services vendors currently competing in the cloud market to showcase what top cloud professional services vendors are offering. In a moment, Ramunas will walk you through some highlights of the study and provide top-level insights of what is today driving buyers to invest in cloud professional services. More detailed analysis is available by purchasing the study. But in the details, I want to do some basic housekeeping. First, we will be recording today's session and posting it to the TBR YouTube channel, and we encourage you to watch the presentation again or pass it along to your colleagues. Second, this is an interactive session, so we want you to ask us any questions that arise during the webcast. I'll collect your questions throughout the session and pose them to Ramunas at the end of the presentation. Third, we'll send out the slides to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the presentation. Now, let me introduce Ramunas Svarcas, TBR's expert on cloud computing. For the 6 years, Ramunas has watched the evolution of cloud transform from its early virtualization roots to the current incarnation that is currently altering business as we know it. So let's start it. Ramunas?
Thanks, Allison. We're going to slide 2 right away here, and I wanted to introduce what we're actually going to cover here in the presentation. One thing that TBR has noticed is that the global marketplace is constantly changing. Excuse me. What I want to address is where cloud professional services are today, what's driving customers by cloud professional services. Professional services vendors are meeting the demand. Our cloud study covers all these 3 elements in quite a bit of detail, and I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the top line results from the study. Information important, certainly from a customer perspective. If you are purchasing cloud professional services, you want to know what the vendors are offering. And very critical to understand what each and every one of the vendors has to offer for you to make a purchase decision. From your perspective, why is this study important? Because there are people competing in the cloud professional services space, and more people are competing in the cloud services space. Understanding who is providing what, where are their solution gaps, what's going on in the marketplace, and likewise understanding what the customers want and need are important if you want to compete in the cloud professional services space. The purposes of the study, TBR looks at cloud as 2 separate entities. Cloud professional services, which is the standard professional services entities of advisory, strategy consulting, IT consulting, going down through the list to implementation, and then lead to the management and maintenance of various infrastructures. And cloud services, they refer to as the software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Some companies even call it everything as a service, being delivered through private, public, or hybrid clouds. We just completed, it really is focused on the cloud professional services area, and not into the cloud services specifically. The challenges is that there are a myriad of offerings in the cloud professional services space. I'm sorry. Just we really broke the study into two separate parts. I was looking at what customers are asking of professional services vendors for the cloud space, and the second part of the offering is that, what are vendors providing? And we examined 11 cloud professional services vendors to understand better what's going on in the marketplace. The survey work consisted of over 600 surveys, 300 conducted here in the United States, and 100 each were conducted in the UK, Germany, and France. Getting results from that from our survey work was that over 73% of the respondents were really or represent enterprise clients with over $1 billion in revenues. So we took a pretty large enterprise group of companies that have a lot of dollars to invest in professional services as well as money available to invest in cloud services. It was a second iteration of our cloud professional services study. We conducted the study also in 2010, and we had considerable success with the study in this time around and in the previous study. 4 or 5 biggest services vendors purchased the study. Have purchased both iterations of the study, and actually one of the vendors that purchased the study told us that the information provided was invaluable for them in focusing their offerings and their go-to-market strategy, and they utilized it quite quickly. So where is the market today? When we did the study in 2010, we found that cloud services were being purchased by enterprise clients quite readily, and there was a problem. IT organizations didn't know what was purchased, where was it being purchased. Cloud professional services were being engaged to help companies rein in their services and figure out what they needed to do. This study certainly indicated to us that there's been a considerable transformation in the marketplace. Cloud professional services are being purchased by various enterprise clients in order for them to help them decide on what cloud services they really need. Cloud services do help and improve, their ability and speed to marketplace. So the enterprise customers need to understand what services should I get and why. If anyone gets into understanding the cloud professional services market, one has to understand what's going on with cloud services. As earlier, we look at, for this purposes of this week, at cloud professional services, but look at one half of the equation without at least understanding what's going on in the other half. The study, the interview work that we did, indicated to us that cloud services are readily being purchased by enterprise clients. Their numbers ranging in the range of 40, 50, 60% of all enterprises are looking at or purchasing various cloud services. The enterprise clients that we talked to, it was in excess of 80% and approaching 90% in terms of purchasing and considering cloud services. The driver here of looking at cloud services, and the consequence is that enterprises are subsequently looking at and purchasing cloud professional services. Again, and here's a comparison from our last year's study, is that the number of cloud professional services engagements actually has declined. This is a problem, however. Enterprise clients are better educated. They understand what cloud can do as a result of the advisory services that they were purchased in the previous years, and they have a much better feel of what's going on in the marketplace. Certainly, there are some customers that are not buying cloud services by choice. They feel that cloud still isn't there and ready for them. They do the work themselves and they don't need professional services. The majority of the customers we talk to certainly are looking at cloud professional services as an aid and assistance into purchasing cloud services. Where we're at on the cloud professional life cycle. We're working with enterprise clients at the stage where advisory and consulting has been engaged, and now we're looking at actually initiating and implementing cloud services in our organization, leveraging what cloud has to offer, transforming our IT infrastructure into an environment where we can leverage cloud. Not necessarily all enterprise clients, certainly is a compendium and a wide variation along the curve, but we're at a stage where effectively we're looking at engagements that are much smaller in nature but are providing a much larger revenue stream. Consequence, based on our research work and examining the vendors, is that cloud professional services revenue growth is expanding quite rapidly. We're looking at growth rates well in excess of 25%. Specifically, we have bucketed here in three types of cloud professional services vendors. Services vendors, hardware portfolios like the traditional IBMs, AEs of the world. We also looked at system integrators like Accenture, Deloitte, and then in-base vendors. And that growth is occurring at all three, with all three types of vendors, and occurring as a result of the engagements that the vendors are involved in. Cloud, customers are recognizing that they do want cloud professional services, need those services, and they're engaging them to basically improve their organization. Why are the systems integrators growing the most rapidly? The result just very strongly to us that the education that has occurred over the several years and the advisory and the consulting work, the enterprise clients now are recognizing that they want the best-in-breed solution, not necessarily the solution that their current infrastructure vendor may or may not provide, but they're shifting towards looking at a best-in-breed. And many of these customers feel that the vendor-agnostic systems integrators that don't have a hardware portfolio deliver that and bring that to their organization. What's interesting is that the growth rates here also reflect a little bit of what's happening with respect to the vendors themselves. Many vendors are at various stages in the cloud life cycle. Much more advanced offerings from a professional services standpoint. Others, are still just formulating their strategy regarding the marketplace and are starting to roll out a few cloud services, some professional services to support cloud services. So there's a wide compendium of various vendors having a wide variation of customers in the cloud marketplace. The research that we did certainly asked the question of our cloud customers, what's driving change? Why are we changing? Why are we just going out and buying cloud services? And the questions that arise are from a customer standpoint are, I don't have cloud services to buy. I don't know what the cost will be over the short term. Will be the impact over the long term. These really dive a whole list of requirements and needs from the customer standpoint. Professional services vendors can help the answers, and they do, but it's important to decide which vendor do I choose, which is very critical from a customer standpoint. Key demand drivers, and this is at a very top level based on the survey work we did. So selection criteria standpoint, many of the customers indicated they really want a high value for the price they're paying for professional services. So there are other areas where they're interested and have needs. Certainly believe that the vendor must have a working knowledge of their own infrastructure and of all the cloud available solutions and services that are out there in the marketplace. And they feel that the vendor must be able to help them integrate and bring this all to bear within their organization. Standpoint, and this is a continuation of the work we did in 2010, We continue to see that customers are very focused on improving their own business. They want to use, they want to expand, they want to improve customer satisfaction. They improve their business innovation process and really improve their own organizational efficiency. So certainly there is a need from that perspective that cloud professional services can couple what services can offer to what they're doing organizationally to improve their own company. Finally, there's certainly a lot of expectation in terms of skills, and analytics is a critical area of importance for many of the customers, and they feel a cloud professional services vendor certainly should be knowledgeable in that area and be able to help them as they move to a cloud environment and engage in cloud services. Two specific software areas, customer relations management and supply chain management, have very important areas also that appeared in the work that we did this year. Last year when we did this work, they were not very high on the list, primarily because of the understanding that the cloud space was still occurring and they weren't sure whether or not areas and entities could actually be moved to the cloud environment. Certainly is a growing trend from that standpoint. So what is actually doing regarding these various requirements, needs, wants from a custom standpoint? About various offerings from a professional services standpoint on a daily basis, in line with rollout also cloud service on a daily basis. The sheer volume of announcements is growing at a very exponential pace. Every company almost every week has something new to announce and tell their clients in terms of what they're doing in the cloud space. In fact, what we're seeing is the vendors are listening to their clients and are delivering to their needs. And also reacting to what's happening in the economic environment, recognizing that customers are dealing with growth changes and issues. Economic growth is not moving very quickly. Everybody's trying to expand their revenue streams, trying to gain customers, trying to satisfy customers better. Need to provide professional services that couple cloud services to meet those very specific business goals. So what are the various vendors doing? Things that we found in the study, and I've provided an example of for one of the companies that's actually embodied in our study of what is happening, is that partnerships are becoming a key element in the delivery cloud professional services. They're becoming very intricate. Knowledge gained is essential in serving customers in terms of what they do with cloud. So the whole and partnership infrastructure is really magnifying and expanding very rapidly. One noted in the whole space is that, in fact, some partnerships and relationships of the vendors that are providing professional services are essential in terms of engaging customers in for professional services in the cloud space. They become table stakes for some of the relationships. Certain clients can speak to a vendor unless they are, they have the partnership relationship in place and can fluently speak regarding the applications that they have in-house, infrastructure they have, the processes and procedures that they are involved with, and making sure that those other application vendors that they've used are included in the overall family of partnerships that the professional services vendor is working with. The other part of the equation from a vendor perspective is that vendors are, as I already mentioned, rolling out a number of different offerings. They're addressing specific risks and needs, and likewise overcoming various issues that keep surfacing from a customer standpoint. What on this slide really is just a couple of examples of what's happening. To focus on applications. Cloud services, software as a service are a key area of interest by many of the customers. Professional services vendors are looking at applications and trying to provide services that address those needs. Offers a smart cloud application service as a platform as a service. Obviously provide additional consulting, advisory work on how to engage and bring this to bear. It's a cost in itself, but they have an additional number of professional services around that engagement to provide value and help the client bring them into house. Deloitte, two systems integrators without any real hardware portfolio, are leveraging that, and they're going and providing cloud-related professional services in line with their traditional consulting services, addressing the strategy of implementing cloud in an organization, match the business objectives and needs, and how they can actually be handled by leveraging the cloud services available and providing the cloud professional services to get those services in place. The deal breakers that many customers indicate will prevent them from entering the cloud space and engaging cloud professional services are being addressed by the vendors right now. I, for one, is offering a full compendium of cloud solutions. It's not just providing all the services necessary to implement cloud, but in addition to that, a little added value is that they are willing to run pilot programs where you can test the cloud environment, see if it'll work for you before engaging and upgrading to a full-scale cloud situation. A service that certainly is invaluable and is very is considered to provide the added value of being able to examine the expense of engaging in cloud services before actually jumping in full boat. It really is some of the highlights of the study and where we are with cloud professional services and our cloud professional services study. A quick glimpse as to where cloud professional services are today, and we definitely see that cloud professional services are being purchased by customers, and they're really looking at purchasing higher value services. The study examines in much more detail, and I provide a few glimpses as to what is driving customers to buy cloud professional services. Customers are perceiving the value of cloud. When we did the study in 2010, one of the key drivers was that there was a feeling that our internal staffs could do everything, and ourselves, we don't need any help in cloud. The volume and number of cloud services that has evolved is making many customers recognize that they need assistance and help. They need knowledgeable advisors and help with the implementation of cloud services that they can make the journey successfully. How cloud professional services vendors meeting demand? Their broad professional services portfolio. And they certainly are moving into a partnership model that is very extensive so that they have the capabilities to meet the needs and desires of clients. So if that, the market is changing, and that's one of the key things that we did see. We're going to be looking at this work again in the near future. You're interested in how cloud professional services are changing, how client and customer needs are evolving. Certainly, this can help you better understand that and see the transition from the previous years. People that are purchasing cloud professional services, certainly it's important to understand which vendors are offering which services and which vendors are offering which professional services to accompany their cloud services. At the same, from a vendor perspective, there are a number of competitors in the cloud professional services space. To know those vendors, and especially the leading vendors that we've covered in this study, is very important. There are in the professional services space, certain areas are not being fulfilled. Certain needs for some are differ than others, and there is variation in terms of the client needs based on the specific services offered. This certainly showed us that when you're looking about consulting and advisory work, you have one set of needs. Looking at systems integration and implementation, there certainly is another set of needs and wants from a customer standpoint that are evolving for the cloud professional services space. Tail end, from a maintenance and support standpoint, certainly you're looking at a completely different list of needs and wants from customers. And it's important to understand those needs and wants in order to best serve those customers and successfully revenues and expand in the cloud professional services space. I open up the floor for any questions.
Great, Ramunas. We have a couple come in. I'd like to encourage anyone out there that has any questions to either type them in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and I'll get right to them. The first question is, the study examined the difference geographically of professional services?
We did the survey work in two major geographies, but really we were looking at 4 specific countries: United States, Germany, France, and the UK. The results do indicate that there are variations in the space in what customers want and need. When we did the study in 2010, there's a lot of commonality of everybody looking for regarding the cloud services and what's happening in cloud. We're seeing a divergence of that interest. Many companies, in mentality, we purchasing cloud software as a service as their first engagement, and we're seeing that there's now being there's a shift in movement of what they're actually purchasing from a cloud services standpoint, and subsequently drive demand for different types of cloud professional services. In all of the European countries, there's much more focus on infrastructures of service and professional services that can help drive those infrastructures, while in some of the other countries we're seeing platform as a service as a driving element. So yes, there are differences pointed as part of the study, and certainly there is more information regarding that within the study.
Great. Our next question is, what are the top 5 to 6 challenges that cloud professional services addresses?
There are quite a few, actually. I think the top challenges is, fully meeting the needs of the clients. The client space is very diverse, and different clients are at different stages in the cloud professional services space as they are with cloud services themselves. It was interesting as part of the study, various vendors are addressing different elements within the overall cloud life cycle. We heard from one vendor, and I was a little bit surprised. He said we won't actually deal with and get really engaged in professional services unless the client fully understands what cloud is and what cloud services are. So one of the biggest challenges is if you don't yet understand what cloud is and have not become educated, there's your first challenge, is to educate them. And that education process typically, in many cases, is something you also have to do for free. But then you have the advantage of having done that. You can very quickly gain their trust and move on to the true consulting and systems integration activities in the cloud space. So that's one of the challenges is making sure your clients are aware of what's going on in the cloud and certainly addressing their specific needs and desires. We know as part of the study that one of the other challenges is that infrastructure vendors tend to be the first vendors there are in each regarding cloud professional services, because those infrastructure vendors, the ones that have put your servers, your platform in place, know your business and know what equipment you have and how it can be transformed into a cloud environment. Seeing that now as education has occurred, the challenge now is that customers no longer just want the same vendor, they want the best solution possible at the lowest cost. In other words, they're looking for the best value. And that becomes critical, and they're looking outside their traditional infrastructure vendors to move in that direction. That's it, Beth.
So we've got two questions that came in based on your answer, actually. One actually came in from a listener that said she interpreted that question differently. The challenges that the client is facing that they're using cloud professional services to help them solve.
At the very top level, clients want to improve their business. And that's been a consistent theme last 2 years as we've talked to clients. They're looking at improving their businesses. So really are having a melding of business issues with client issues. They're looking at how they can address various business issues, improve profitability, improve revenue streams, improve customer satisfaction, and then have specific target areas that they're looking at. When we did the study, again, 2010, one of the key areas that everybody thought they wanted to improve was desktop productivity. That fell kind of the radar screen in 2011. Analytics has become a very prevalent theme and area for improvement from a business standpoint. How do I analyze data in my organization and leverage cloud to do so? Going on to, and I had mentioned earlier, customer relationship management is certainly important as well, supply chain management. Two is that customers now feel are areas where they can move to the cloud, and they want assistance from cloud professional services vendors to move in that direction. I hope that answered the question.
It did. Okay, so the next question is, what are the key client decision factors that lead them to decide to purchase cloud consulting and professional services?
That is really one of the key. And the reasons why clients will not purchase cloud services, but what is driving people to actually purchase cloud professional services is the perceived value equation. They, in fact, the professional services vendor is, enabled to accomplish and move their infrastructure to the cloud environment in a very cost-efficient and much more rapid pace. Become educated in cloud takes a lot of time and effort. While there are those companies that feel that they can do it themselves, the education process continues to extend at a prolonged period of time. A cloud professional services vendor comes in and has that knowledge of what cloud can do and match that to the prospective customer's needs, and subsequently create that equation for them so that they can get into the cloud, leverage the cloud, improve their business very rapidly.
Excellent. Our question is, the Indian-based vendors seem to be growing faster than the traditional infrastructure vendors. What's going on?
Indian-based vendors from a cloud professional services space have a small play. They're working off a much smaller base, so certainly their growth rates are going to expand as they're entering into the marketplace and grow a little bit more rapidly than some of the other vendors. The vendors obviously have always had the advantage of leveraging labor arbitrage. I pointed cloud professional, the life cycle curve out, and many times the Indians may not be first to market, but they tend to flatten that life cycle curve very quickly, leveraging their low-cost infrastructure in terms of delivering various professional services to the customers. So they are making inroads. There's in small niche places at the present time, but certainly have the possibility, impact of having learned from the leaders in the marketplace what's succeeding, what not, the flat net curve from a growth and revenue standpoint in the future.
Fine. 2 questions as our final question. The question was about the report. Does it go into specifics on the challenges and what the client needs in these areas are? And the second part of that is what cloud services are actually being purchased. Does the report go into details on those 2 things?
We identify, and in fact, we identify the various drivers for the various customer groups in terms of from a geographic space perspective, what's going on in the marketplace and what they're looking for. In terms of the second question, can you repeat for me again?
There was a question about what our cloud services are actually being purchased and what sorry.
While you're looking for the rest of the question, from a cloud services standpoint, the cloud professional services study not focus on specifically cloud services that are being purchased. We have a second study that was actually executed that looked into much more in depth in terms of the various types of infrastructure, software, and platform as a service that is purchased by the various customers. This study focused on cloud professional services, and we do break down from a professional services standpoint into 3 basic buckets. What is the demand for consulting and work? What's the demand for system integration work? And then what's the demand for applications development, maintenance type work from a professional services standpoint for cloud?
Okay, I don't know if the second part of that was the specific, the challenges and the client needs. Does the report cover those details? We can move on to the next one.
Yes, it does.
Okay. The next question I have is, from an internal sales model perspective, what are the most successful organizational models and best practices you have seen to fast evolve the cloud professional services organization?
Everybody's evolving their cloud professional services practices. We've, in discussions with the various vendors, we saw a number of different approaches. We saw vendors at a number of different stages in those approaches. Some of the vendors were just getting their arms around how to serve the cloud professional services space. Others were actually developing formal practice areas and P&Ls around cloud services and cloud professional services. So we saw a compendium of them. Because the whole cloud professional services is evolving right now, I could identify the best practice at the present time because I think it's still in its evolution stage. There probably are certain practices that drive much closer and meet much better certain customer needs. But overall, I can't, and I don't feel comfortable yet judging that there's one practice or one vendor that's doing the best job possible across the board.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Ramunas. This is some information on the trends in cloud professional services. I want to thank everyone for the questions that came in. So the conversation up today, I'd like to share with you some information regarding the report that Ramunas just talked about, as well as some other TBR cloud reports. If the call would like to get more information on the report we just covered or the other related reports that TBR publishes, we've listed them here, as well as contact information for both Ramunas and James McAvoy, our VP of Sales. If you'd like to ask a question that you haven't already posed, we're going to leave the line open for a few more minutes to give you a chance to ask those questions. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great afternoon.